it's an absolute privilege to host my friend Arush, who, incidentally, we've been in touch on WhatsApp and on LinkedIn and so on, and never met in person before this. And so, thanks to this platform, I get to meet you in person.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Arush's journey is something which has been extremely interesting for us, and unfortunately we never got to be investors, but we watched it from the sidelines, and a huge congratulations to you and your team for all the success. Of course, now it's a household name and a very successful one, and with Marico's acquisition, which we'll talk about a bit more about how it happened and what it's meant for you, it's turned out to be an even bigger name. So I wanted to first start, Arush, by getting your views on how have you seen the overall D2C brands ecosystem evolve from the day you started to today, when you're kind of operating a fairly large scale business.
Right. First of all, thank you everybody for having me. Excited to be here. So I think I started in 2014, right? So there was no term like D2C then, right? So there was no D2C. I thought I was just starting a brand, a consumer business. My story is that I used to be working in the corporate world in Singapore, both my wife and I. My mom, she used to make certain lotions and potions, just like a home baker does, something for a hobby back in Chandigarh. And we had kind of had enough of that corporate life. And I thought, if I don't go back and build something in India, which is the biggest consumer market, then, it would be too late. I mean, I had to do it now. So finally we took that plunge and we came back to do it. So started everything from scratch, right? From putting the supply chain together, the packaging. The packaging was designed on the dining table. I poached a guy, didn't have money to hire an agency. So poached a guy from every city has a place where flyers are printed. So the guy used to operate the computer. I told him, "Ya tu 2 घंटे के लिए Sunday को आ जाइए, पैसे ले लेना, packaging बनानी है." So that's how we kind of started, and that was the ecosystem. Cash on delivery sort of didn't exist. I remember I actually put out a screenshot of an email with PayU telling them that your platform is not mobile friendly. People can't make proper payment. Please do work on that. So that's the time I'm talking about. A Track on Couriers was a guy who still works with us, by the way, and given him so much business. He had started his agency for Track on Couriers. Okay, so we told him that COD करना पड़ेगा because consumers वो करते हैं. तो he's like, ठीक है, क्या करना है उसमें? Like, वो पैसे लेके आते हैं consumers से. तो 10,000 रुपए का कुछ था. And he said कि मैंने कहा वो पैसे कहाँ हैं? Like, वो तो खर्च कर दिए लड़के ने वापस आते हुए ना. Parcels used to get lost. So that was the time, and today we have come to a stage where it's pretty much plug and play. You just need to figure out what you need to do. The entire ecosystem is available. You just need to have the idea, the gumption to just start, and then you can do it. So that is how I have kind of seen the cycles and everything and the evolution of the whole sector.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree. I think my journey, for instance, started with a food brand called Epigamia, right? And at that point in time, there was actually, I don't even think there was any scope for us to sell yogurt on Amazon. So we were absolutely offline, and offline actually used to be the only sort of go-to channel to reach consumers. Us time pe to even thinking of digital was very, very novel. And then of course you're talking about your early stage struggles, literally teaching your courier guy to do COD and so on. So I think your generation of founders have really done a lot of heavy lifting and contributed in building the market and the category. And today, the younger lot of founders that we meet have the benefit of, you guys rubbing your nose on the ground and, literally ironing out the road for them, right?
I mean, brands of the time, for example, Biotic didn't have a shopping cart on its website. Kama Ayurveda had 4 pages. It was just a catalog. Didn't even have a shopping cart. At that point, I actually remember hiring a developer in Nepal on Upwork because I thought this is one currency where, the rupee will be stronger and, paise kam the. So we made a website on WordPress, and that's how we kind of, got started. And then Nykaa was a PowerPoint presentation when we got onboarded on Nykaa. So really have seen that evolution, and it's been phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, truly. I think every stakeholder now in the ecosystem is kind of very accessible. like you said, very plug and play. The entire D2C stack, right, from warehousing, logistics,
Absolutely.
payments, and now Simpl also.
Yeah.
It's so easy to kind of manage logistics, and you have the entire CRM dashboard.
Yeah.
Payments is a breeze. Banking systems are set
I
up.
mean, when
UPI.
Shopify came in, I was like, "यार ये लगा दो," because both of us are non-tech founders.
Yeah.
So हमें कुछ नहीं पता tech के बारे में. So we used to spend so much time worrying about whether the server can take the load. The site used to crash. Site used to become slow.
Yeah.
So that was like the inflection point, is what I would say. You know. So there was so much ready-made stuff available to kind of just go ahead and start.
And what about you touched a bit upon formulations and stuff. How did you work on your supply chain, and how is that piece evolved for founders now?
Luckily for us, my founding team, Megha is the sort of the commercial person. She comes from a business background. My mom has always been the R&D. Even today, she goes to the factory and she has a team and she oversees everything what is getting made. I think the idea was that I was literally the bridge between what the consumer needs and then bringing it back. And so we were vertically integrated, right? So my first videos on Facebook to sell the brand was to show how it is being made, right? So, and there was just one room and the rest was all like a kacha plot, and that one room was also built so that the government doesn't take away that land because you have to do something on it, right? That's how we kind of started. So it was very raw, right? So the formulations and the communication kind of evolved over time. We had nothing to show the consumer apart from the fact that we are putting good stuff in these products and we'll show them to you. So the formulation itself, and I think we were just talking about this as well, from in 0 to 1, I think the product quality is super important, right? I mean, once you get scale, it's distribution. But when you want to wow somebody with the product, you have to make sure that the product is very good, right? Because at the end of the day, the talent ecosystem, the investor ecosystem is pretty much the same for everybody. The only differentiator is the product, right? So,
True.
And not just the wrapper, but the product inside.
Yeah. And I think that aspect still holds true, right? If you're starting a brand business today as well, product differentiation, its efficacy continues to be the be the core of building a brand. You did mention a bit about the investment or the investor sort of ecosystem. How is that? And I'll talk about my experience as well, but would love to hear from a founder's perspective. How do you think that has changed? Has it evolved? Was it better earlier? Is it easier now?
No, I think it has changed in many aspects. So I'll start with that. So I mean, like when we started, I think physical product companies were not investable for VCs, right? They used to think that only tech companies should get funded. I think 2015-16 they started realizing these can also scale pretty fast. Or nobody had scaled by then, but people started thinking the money can be made here. So we started getting some inbound interest. But then I mean I'm sorry, but I have to be honest but there are biases in investors around a lot of things, right? Look, I'm not an MBA. I come from a liberal arts background, although I have worked in finance before this. Megha is not an MBA. We don't live in a Gurgaon, Delhi or a Bangalore where the so-called ecosystem is, right? So all these did become barriers for us. I remember getting a term sheet where one of the prerequisites, the conditions precedent was that the company has to move the office to Gurgaon and all that, right? So I still have that. So that has changed now.
Right.
Finally, the investors met. They said, "यार तुम हमें क्या फर्क पड़ता है? तुम चांद पे बैठ के धंधा बनाओगे, हमें कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. As long as you're building value, right?"
Very true.
That is a very big change, and I think that has to happen because every business being based out of 3 cities in the country is just not sustainable, right? I mean, there's a lot that you can, there's a lot that can happen when founders in every part of the country start building, and they're doing that now, in every sector.
Yeah, that's very true. In fact, when I started Sauce in 5 years ago, people were still asking me, why are you building a fund just to do consumer brands? And there were literally 1 or 2 other folks like Kaval who had started Fireside, and there was DSG at that point in time.
Absolutely.
We now have a bunch of young fund managers who are now focused a lot more specifically on consumer brands. So for all you founders out there, there is a variety of investors that you can talk to and find and pick your partner, and that's an important decision for all of you. And I think that ecosystem has deepened. Consumer and consumer brands as a investable product for fund managers is now fairly validated, because we've had not one but multiple consumer brand-led IPOs into the market. All of them coincidentally significantly outperform upon listing when compared to, let's say, tech IPOs, right? And the flip side of that, unfortunately, is that there are a lot of non-consumer focused VCs who now think they should they should start putting money in consumer as well, which is great for founders. But just Arush and I were also discussing how important it is to get someone who understands your dhanda and not just provide capital, because at some level capital is a commodity, and so partnership is far more important. And I'm sure you guys will choose widely. But the point is that I think that ecosystem has come a long way across things. I just wanted to ask you one question, right? So, we invest in founders at a very early stage, at a pre-revenue, almost at an idea stage. That's where we come in with all our brands. One of the things we also try and figure and assess is, how is a founder thinking about long-term vision for their company, right? There are founders who are building businesses with a thought process that we'll build something valuable, but we'll be happy to sell this and pass it on to someone who can make it larger, and we'll get our exit. And then there are founders who want to do nothing else except run that business for the rest of their lives, because that's where they see their sort of calling, right? For me, it's, I always appreciate founders who have that clarity. I also understand they may not have it necessarily day zero. But as an investor partner, it also gives us clarity on how we should together build this business out day zero, right? So when you started Jasas, did you have some sort of an idea, or was it abhi to banate hain, baad mein dekhenge?
पहली बार जब start किया था तो I didn't have any sort of market sizing, TAM, this, that. I thought my mom is making a solid product and I should go do something about it. 5 years, ran it as a bootstrapped venture, was putting food on the table, profitable. 5th year, we thought now we should get some external capital, and especially because we were getting inbounds. But because I had worked in private equity, I did understand at least what this means, but nothing beyond that. जब अपने लिए करना होता है तब कोई knowledge काम नहीं आती. And a lot of investors I know are worried about this. They would ask me in conversations that, imagine if something happens and we ask you कि अब CEO को लाना है and all that. तो मैं preparation करके गया था. एक ही answer देना होता है. I'll do what is right for the business. No matter what is.
हम लोग
I'll do what is good for the business.
When we meet founders, we know they're gonna get this answer. So we पहले get them absolutely drunk. And then we ask this question कि then like मैं तो बेच के निकल लूँगा sir.
नहीं, but jokes apart, I think इतनी clarity जरूर थी कि यार जिस दिन company में एक भी share बेच दिया, this company is not yours to be then.
Very true. Yeah.
And एक ना एक दिन सारे shares कोई ना कोई तो लेके जाएगा, या वो general public होगी या कोई और बड़ी company होगी. This thing is, you are going to own some part of this company which may be more valuable. So basically, it's about control and making money, and both I feel for a founder are inversely proportional, right? If you want to keep control, then the money that you can make out of it is going to be lesser, and if you make more money, then you'll have to part with control. You can't eat your cake and have it too, as they say.
Very true. I think there's one other element to it, like if you think about your business as something that you want to eventually take public, right? It typically means two things. It means possibly a longer gestation period, because it does take time for a company to hit scale, to hit that level of maturity, for it to be ready for public markets. Yeah. So it does mean a prolonged liquidity event for the founders. Of course, along the journey, you can take off small chips in secondaries, but your big liquidity event will largely happen in parts at a late IPO, and then also you can't really sell everything, right?
Sure.
You cannot signal to a public market that you're the promoter and you're selling. So you kind of build something valuable, but you can't see liquidity in it, as opposed to a strategic acquisition which can happen far sooner, where you're still owning a larger chunk of the pie and you get to kind of sell the whole pie and get that liquidity, right?
Exactly.
So how was your thought? Was that an influence in your decision making when you thought about, you know, and I'd love to hear more about, you know, the entire journey and how it happened with Marico. I think a lot of people here would gain a lot from that.
Yeah, so I'll just continue with the previous thing. So 5 years bootstrapped. So this is my 10th year, right? And 5 years were bootstrapped. 6th year raised a very small round from Roots Ventures. And I think in 18 months, them and all the angels who had come in that round were given a very handsome exit. They all very good IRR because Marico had bought that stake. Now the Marico thing wasn't planned at all. We were pitching to investors. It's very hard, man. Like, let me just share that with everybody. Raising money is hard. Okay, so you might just see success stories in newspapers and all, but what happens behind those stories nobody really talks about. So I think we would have pitched to 50-60 investors, and we had seen investors come in different shapes, sizes, right? And we had seen most of those. And so when I saw an email in my mailbox, somebody wanting me to connect with the M&A head of Marico, I thought it was just spam or something. I didn't pay attention to it. And Megha, my co-founder, she's like, "Baat to kar lo kam se kam," you know. So when I spoke to them, it was a good vibe. Yeah, it was a good vibe, and I'm a big believer in sort of you need to do business with good people.
They're great people, yeah.
And the next meeting was straight away with Shobita, and then one after that was with Sanjay, who was the CEO then, and this was COVID time here, so I remember having the chat with the CEO and just falling on the bed because I think I had contracted COVID. Yeah. So that was, and so with COVID, I had to take a call between 3 other term sheets that we had. One of them was a fund which would put in some money, but it wasn't really a strategic. The other 2 were strategic conversations. Yeah, so that was that. And we Megha and I used to speak on the phone because we were under quarantine. So we decided that this seems interesting for a couple of reasons. A, because they'd acquired a brand before us, which they let Bedo, which was basically operating from Ahmedabad, where it is based, and they let it be. And there was no sort of forced integration or anything, right? Which is the biggest fear founders have. That was a big plus. And we were not in any haste to kind of sell the entire company. We still thought that we can build some scale in this business, and we would get some synergies with Marico as well. So net, I think this was an interesting thing, and this was a time when that whole roll-up thing was also happening here, that Thrasio model, and there was a lot of money sloshing around, and every other day we would get something in your LinkedIn that we want to have a call with you and all that. तो बड़ा सारा noise था यार, तो उसमें फोकस करा कि यार बंदे ठीक लग रहे हैं, सब कुछ ठीक है. सबसे बड़ी बात है आई थिंक कि जो पैसा वो हमें इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं, दैट इज द कैश फ्लो दैट द कंपनी जनरेट्स. इट थ्रोज फ्री कैश every year. It's not borrowed money, right? It's not even like a VC which has taken money from LPs and then is investing. This is money. That was a comforting factor for us as well. So in hindsight, I think it was a good decision. I wouldn't do it in any other way if I still had it, but it wasn't a planned one, right?
Sure.
It was very organic, and a lot of founders I meet now also, they say, yeah, we also had these things, and sometimes the investors also block this. They want to stay in, but the founder still wants to sell. Sometimes there is that, I sense that little regret when I speak to people. It's also about taking the right calls at the right time. Yeah. It's also being engaged with your current investors and telling them what's in it for them, and it's also about them understanding you. So it's a very tricky situation. There's a lot of moving parts, and I'm glad that we were able to pull it all together, especially at a time when it was COVID and everybody was so stressed anyway about businesses in general.
No, I can imagine the stress and the decision making at that time. We'll talk about the synergies you talked about a bit later, but I just want to deep dive a little bit more into that decision making when you have multiple offers, right? Including from, an investment fund.
Yeah, we went from no offers to multiple offers.
ऐसा भी होता है.
मतलब मजा आ गया था एकदम से. It's like there was a time when I felt like I didn't want to get out of my room. I didn't want to get out of my bed. I was down, man. Like I was down and out. It's hard. It's like getting punched in your face every day, and then every morning you have to go up again and go, into the ring. It was just literally like that. उस टाइम पे जब सडनली आपको यार 4 टर्म शीट मिलती हैं, it really is a big confidence booster.
Absolutely.
You do start doubting yourself. It's real. Self-doubt is real when you face so much rejection, so many no's. So yeah, that was good. And
so no investor the investor who gave you the term sheet, for instance, when you told them that, look, sorry, we want to. Yeah. I'm sure they came back and showed
he lost his mind. Yeah. He got very angry. I told him, I said, you've given me a term sheet, don't start DT, don't do anything because, I don't want to waste your time, right? I'm being nice to you, but I think that was lost on him. He was just very upset that why are we not taking it and this and that.
And he didn't show you the moon कि यार साथ में बनाते हैं IPO करेंगे और ये इतना पे आउट होगा.
हाँ, वो तो होता ही है. वो तो हम स्टार्टिंग से सुन रहे थे, राइट? वो तो किसी भी इन्वेस्टर को तब तक दिल को ठंडक नहीं मिलती जब तक फाउंडर ये ना बोलते कि मैंने 5,000 करोड़ की कंपनी बनानी है. लाइक वो बनेगी कैसे, उसमें कम इंटरेस्ट होता है, बट दे वांट टू फर्स्ट ईयर कि what is the vision. तो ये तो I'm sure this is always music to the ears of any investor. But you have to also understand the sector that you operate in.
Absolutely.
Right? I think in the beauty space, building a 150 crore, 100 crore, 200 crore brand is तेल निकल जाता है.
बिल्कुल.
Right, and these are like very valuable assets and easier to find acquirers for these assets. And if you look at the US, that's the trend there also, and now it's picking up in India too.
Yep, absolutely. I think a $20 million brand in the US is a brand, man. Especially when it comes to BPC. And on behalf of the VC community, I do take this criticism well. That unicorn banana in consumer brands is a compulsion or a need of the VC, not of the founder. And for founders to choose the right VC partner is very important. People who've seen the journey of consumer brands, who understand the limitations of scale of India when you're building a premium brand. It's मतलब कितने यूनिकॉर्न निकले हैं यार इन कंज्यूमर. ये एक इकलौता बैठा, उसका भी यहाँ पे एक रिप्रेजेंटेटिव बैठा हुआ है. There's just one Mama Earth. But then for every Mama Earth, there are such amazing brands like Beardo, like Just Herbs, like Villain, like there's so many beautiful brands which have been built and sold where early investors who did not have the compulsion of forcing them to create a unicorn have made really good money. Angels have made really good money.
Correct.
Family offices have made great money.
It's a good outcome. It's a good outcome for everyone.
And strategics have done well to acquire these brands, plug it into their distribution, and they've made money. Yep. So just because a VC fund has outsized its own fund size and therefore needs a unicorn outcome to give returns on its.
Yeah, I think you should explain this bit a bit more.
I will.
What do you mean outsized? Let's say.
So one of the reasons at Sauce, for instance, we keep our funds small, right? So, and just for the benefit of this group, we're at 250 crore. Our third fund is 250 crores. And why have we sized it at 250 crores? We're going to do, let's say, 15 bets. And given our hit rate, how many do you think? And we enter at a pre-revenue stage, right? We'll get 4 or 5 right. And what is right and what's a win for us? A win for us is if you take your brand to 150, 200 crores, that's a win for us. That is very achievable. In a 5, 6, 7 year time frame, we've done that with a 70% success rate. So we know we'll definitely do it with a 33. No stress on the founders, right? Yeah. So ingoing conversation is, यार तू बता दे तेरे को 100-150 करोड़ पे बेचना है, we're happy. तेरे को 500-1000 करोड़ की कंपनी बनानी है, we're happy to support that journey. We'll need more partners for that, right? But even if a founder gives a reasonable $20-30 million scale, that if we own 20% returns my fund. And that's fantastic for me, right? So I have understood what scale is, what reality of scale is in India, and sized my product like that, so that founder doesn't have to achieve, the impossible, because I'm setting up my odds or my probability for winning very low, and then I push founders down a path which is an absolute disaster. And we've got enough erstwhile unicorns in consumer brands, which are now, and a lot of it has to do with setting off on the wrong strategy. So for young founders here, when you think about scale, a $20-30 million outcome on revenue is actually really good, and it is very achievable. And in fact, one of the things you don't need to do to get to that is to go into the dreaded general trade, right? General trade is an animal which is least understood by D2C founders. It is a learning curve which takes decades. We've got brands which are really successful on general trade. General trade is a promoter-led dhanda, it's not a founder-led dhanda. Right? It's for people who got 20-30 years of distributor relationships, because you have to deal with distributors and offline salespeople who will invest in your brand because they know you for decades and have trust in you.
It's about Bangkok trip and scooty and
that's one form of trust building.
iPhone milega. This still works, right? Yeah. This is how the industry runs.
But today the reality is, sitting in 2024 with a good D2C stack, with Amazon, Myntra, Nykaa, Flipkart, and so on, and now with a new animal called quick commerce. We can, in a 7-year time, like in 2030, 2031, we can easily create a 200-300 crore dhanda just digitally, with a bit of modern trade and limited general trade peacefully, and extract awesome value for ourselves as founders and as early investors.
That's exactly,
without necessarily getting into that trap.
No, that's exactly what we've done, right? That's been our story. I mean, general trade, we do a beauty advisor-led model, right? Before COVID, we had our own stores. During COVID, we shut them and then we recalibrated. We said, like, forget everything. We'll focus online. And then in the last year or so, we built our offline. Very, very specific channel, right? It is a beauty advisor-led channel. There is a girl standing there to sell you the product. It's a different beast. The team that you need to make that channel is very specific. Average age is 45 and above, because that's the kind of experience you need to crack this. I figured this pretty early on that, I'm going to fall flat on my face if I don't pay attention to all this.
It's very interesting. And the lure of public markets, right, is intrinsically led by a very personal choice of a founder, right? What is the ultimate destination for your business is truly such a personal choice, because leading a company to a public outcome is a journey in itself. And I spoke to Varun as well, and he said it takes 3 years to mentally and physically prepare your company and your team for an IPO. And even then, you think you've sort of dusted and polished every aspect of your business. When you hit markets, it is brutal. Right? And then it doesn't get over there, because now you're on you were on a VC treadmill with VCs on your cap table. Now you are on a quarterly treadmill with public markets and mutual fund investors and analysts chasing you. So it's a never-ending. Did you ever think about a public market outcome for yourselves, or were you very clear that we'd rather partner with someone who adds value to the business and have a longer term vision and a longer term planning for this business?
Well, I didn't have particularly very strong views about either. I think I looked at it in a slightly different way. What I was telling you about control, money. There are 3 things to optimize for, right? The control in your company, how much do you have, how much money you want is good for you, which will keep you happy. And the third thing is the passion, or the sort of, as we say in Hindi, chul, kaam karne ki jo कीड़ा है, वो कहाँ satisfy हो रहा है. तो यार वो काम करने वाला कीड़ा satisfy तो मतलब कर लेंगे, मतलब वो once a creator, once a founder, we were saying वो मजा नहीं आता, वो बिल्ले तो बैठ नहीं सकते, we will build something. Control is, again I said here, you have to understand and have the maturity that the day you sell even one share in your company, this is not your company. And today, even if there was no Marico, I would be putting a leadership team in place which would probably take over me, right? So the idea is what, as the company, I started with 3 people. It was me, my mom, and myself. And then it was just about replacing each thing. We used to do everything ourselves. It was just about replacing each function that we do. पहले हम बिल भी खुद बनाते थे, फिर अकाउंटेंट रख लिया था, ऐसे करके कंपनी बनती है, तो अल्टीमेटली हमने भी रिप्लेस होना ही है, राइट? So that is a reality, right, for everybody. So if that is the reality and you are getting a good outcome at a time and a chance to hit a reset button on your life and also make decent money for everybody in the equation, for all stakeholders, I think it's not a bad place
Absolutely,
to be
man.
in.
Not a bad place to be in at all.
So I thought about it like this, yeah.
Yeah, no, was Marico's potential value add, given the kind of business they are, a criteria for the choice, and how has that played out for you? Like, talk to me a bit about the synergies.
Absolutely. So, it would reflect in the conversations, right? Like when I would speak to financial investors, I sometimes would think, yeah, ये क्या question पूछ रहे हैं मुझसे, like it's totally off the topic, right? I mean, like it shows that you really haven't built a business. When you speak to a strategic, they've built a business, they understand. Sometimes in the conversations, I would hear, yeah, वो बहुत tough होता है, like they would empathize with you. And those are like telltale signs that, yeah, this could be an interesting partnership because इसने भी वही करा, they're also going through the same journey, right? So I think, and the second thing was that we, like, a lot of people think, oh, now it's Marico, now you will just ride on their distribution and तुम तो आग लगा दोगे, right? It's not that, because we are a premium personal care brand, they are slightly more sort of mass. So we don't go into the same shops and all that, so it's not that simple. But apart from that, there are synergies everywhere, right? So let's say a vendor is saying, मैं 2000 बोतल नहीं बनाऊंगा, right? And वो Marico से भी deal करता है, तो we'll ask the head of procurement कि यार एक phone कर दो, please हमारी help कर दो. Sometimes we are able to negotiate better rates with the vendor over them also. And they appreciate that also, and the agility of a startup and all. Like we crack our sort of NPD so fast every month, and they're like, this is something that we could also learn from. We've learned, like I've learned P&L properly after Marico coming in. उसके पहले I think हम freestyle खेल रहे थे, मतलब ठीक है, technique हमने सीखी है उसके बाद, like how a P&L is, what a P&L is, ठीक है, marketing कहाँ लेनी है, discount कहाँ लेने हैं, you know what I'm saying? Like it's a strong accounting standard, a strong corporate governance, processes. Those are like invaluable things that you learn with such a partnership.
Yeah, no, awesome. Yeah, I think players like Marico, and now we're seeing so many strategics coming in, investing directly into startups, especially in the consumer space, right? So, and for us also, right? Some of our biggest investors into our fund are some of the biggest businesses in Indian consumer, right? So Marico is also an investor in our fund, and we've got many other such interesting names. How can you share with the founders here on how do you prepare, or what attracts a strategic, and what some insights into their decision-making process? What did they look at? Do they look at their own portfolio and say, we don't have a premium herbal or natural BPC, so we'll put this into our portfolio mix and push it down our distribution? Or what are the things that, or are they also just saying, yeah, this is a great founding team? And
what attracts a strategic as compared to a VC or a financial investor?
Yeah.
So I think a financial investor, and you would probably know this, is not you, because you're at a different end of that spectrum, but most financial investors or Series A, Series B are basically looking at people who will say, they just want to hear, unicorn बनाऊंगा, 5,000 करोड़ की कंपनी बनेगी, मतलब 5,000 भी शायद कम है, हमको 10,000 करोड़ की कंपनी बनानी है, मतलब वो भी शायद कम हो जाए, It's just about that, right? For a strategic, the question will be, अगर आप उसको बोल भी दोगे ना कि मैं 5,000 की बनाऊंगा, तो question will be कैसे, उसके building blocks क्या हैं, और फिर वो building blocks feasible हैं कि नहीं है. आपने बोला कि मेरा revenue यहाँ से यहाँ जाएगा, क्योंकि उसको पता है कि यार क्या हो सकता है और क्या नहीं हो सकता, right? That is the biggest difference. Second is like they have at least with Marico, and I'm sure with other strategics also, like they are not running after growth at any cost, right? They're not running after unsustainable growth, right? Like with Just Herbs, I think the amount of capital we put into the brand and the kind of outcomes we have achieved, right? And we are proud of it, absolutely, right? And I think they really value that. Maybe a financial investor may not value that so much, because all they want is a very, very big top line. It doesn't matter at what cost that growth comes in. I think this is a very, very big difference. That's what I feel.
Got it. So cash efficiency, depth and product, and an honest conversation about where you think you can take this business,
right?
Which is reasonable, right?
Yeah.
Very interesting. No, it echoes with a lot of conversation we have with strategics as well. I think the good news for founders today is that when you compare it to 6-7 years ago, when the new brands trend of D2C started, the first thing that strategic said, and when we also spoke to them was, "अरे इसमें क्या हम भी बना लेंगे?" That's what their ingoing hypothesis is कि यार Amazon पे हम भी बेच लेंगे, ये लोग तो नौसिखिए हैं, we have 30 years of experience and we have solid brands, we'll win that. They tried it and they failed miserably, and they failed across categories. I think pretty much no large strategic has been able to create a new brand. You know, I did my summer internship in Procter & Gamble in 2001, and I took one of my brands to them 20 years later. When you enter the Procter & Gamble office, there's a wall which has a plaque of all their brands.
Yeah.
वो 20 साल में नहीं बदली थी. They've not been able to launch a single brand in 20 years, and that's true for Unilever. That's true for, the only brand Unilever launched was Ayush.
Most brands are acquired.
So now it's a clear, and now they're even clearer about the fact that they're sitting, like you said, on a lot of operating cash flows and a lot of cash reserves, and they need to do something new to command the premium that they command in the public markets for their valuation, right? So innovation, growth, attracting a new consumer segment, all of that is imperative for them.
Absolutely.
So there is now a lot of M&A action, and we're seeing that across food, we're seeing that across apparel. You're seeing Unilever, ITC, Nestle, Marico, Imami, everyone going out and acquiring.
Sure.
So it's a great time to be building brands, and you can build brands very sustainably. Not every brand needs to be thought of as an IPO or a 10,000 crore ka story today. And those can still be fantastic outcomes for founders, right? And now you have the building blocks also in the ecosystem, right? So तू जब तेरा non-compete खत्म होगा तो फिर से चालू करेगा, right?
अभी तो कुछ नहीं पता. I think it's a founder's block, as you said. It's an empty space that I want to enjoy for some time.
Like you said, resetting.
Yeah. I have a young daughter, like 16 months. I think that's the biggest thing I'm looking forward to. Both Megha and I. So but कुछ तो करना है. क्या करना है अभी? Not clear with that.
You have a value add investor.
Absolutely.
That's a reverse pitch. But no, thanks. Ayush, this is really, really, really good to interact with you. Thank you for sharing your journey.
No.
And hopefully for the founders here, we were able to shed some light about how to think about exits, planning for a strategic or an IPO or any other such outcome. There are many possibilities. There's no one size fits all. Do what you think is right for you, for your stakeholders. Choose the right partners, and ultimately it's a very personal decision. Yeah, right.
Thank you for that very candid, freewheeling conversation. Really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Thank you.